Okay, good morning, everyone. It's 9 o'clock. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Bricktown Urban Design Committee on October 9th. And so, Paula, can you do roll, please?
Jonathan Dodson, Tasha Egan,
Here.
Ophelia Cancio, Richard McCown, Ava Scaramucci,
Here.
Sandino Thompson, and Brent Wall.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Great, thank you, Paula. We have our minutes to approve from September 11th. Do I have any comments or motions?
Motion to approve.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Minutes are approved. We have a pretty light agenda today. Item 3, cases withdrawn, none. 4, continuance request, none. 5, consent docket, none. Cases for individual consideration, none. And then other business is what we're all here for today, being the downtown development framework, which Lisa's going to give us an update on our last meeting, that continuation probably.
Yes. Good morning. I think everybody was here at the last meeting except for Avis. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly and concentrate on responses to a lot of the questions and comments from last time, but Avis, if you need me to back up at any time, let me know. So the Downtown Development Framework was adopted by Planning Commission and Council and all of the design review committees in 2015. So 4 years later, it's past time for an update. So Planning Department has been working on the update for the past 18 to 24 months. So the DDF, it's a adopted plan, which means it sets expectations for development in the downtown area. We use it for design review because it has more detail about streetscapes and facades. For Bricktown, it's unique because Bricktown is the only district that at the time the DDF was finished in 2015, we were working on the last ordinance update for Bricktown. So Bricktown is the only design review body that we were able to actually capture some of the DDF requirements in the ordinance. All the other design districts, we have to refer to it separately, but all the important stuff we got into the last Bricktown ordinance update, like the distinction between east and west Bricktown, more detail about what types of heights and massings and materials were appropriate for each of those districts and for infill sites. So I'm going to skip through this a little bit. So most of our changes, it started off with clarity things, like maps didn't show all the street names, there were misspellings, there were some public parks weren't shown correctly, but the main changes, and I'll go through these in a minute, we updated typologies, we deleted some of the pages that were really hard to interpret, and we added some new pages to address streetcar and park frontages. We updated some of the street typologies. So what I'm showing here is different than what you saw last time because, so development typologies. One of the main comments from last time was about the connectivity from the producers co-op side. One was, hey, why wasn't there? So the left is the original DDF, and then in the proposed. So in the original DDF, producers co-op side, we know that the grid can't develop like it is shown because it can't intersect through the boulevard like it is shown. It's physically impossible. It can't intersect over here at this, there's only 2 intersection points across to Gaylord Boulevard. So we knew this was incorrect, but staff agreed with the committee's concern, and some other committees had voiced it, that we had to somehow communicate that whatever the new street network was, it needed to be walkable and it needed to connect to the other districts. So what we're showing, so we updated the map to show, so the white lines here that I'm pointing at, so part of that concern was related not just to Producers Co-op, but also to the Lower Bricktown PUD. So what we added were existing public street rights-of-way. So on Lower Bricktown, there's only one. It's the Oklahoma extension and this little bitty portion of, I think it's Southeast 2nd Street. That's the only public streets in Lower Bricktown. All the rest are private. And then in Producers Co-op, we added pieces of the existing street right-of-way. There are some remnants over here, but again, our main focus was showing that, hey, there is a connection via Oklahoma between Producers Co-op and Bricktown. There is a connection from Producers Co-op to Convention Center area, Lower Park area, across the railroad tracks, and that can only physically happen at 2 points. But we also realized from your question that we did need to add some language that captures, there may be other streets that get added within the downtown boundary for lots of reasons. We needed to capture that any new streets are not exempt from following a street typology. So we did that by adding a paragraph on the heading paragraph of this page in your revision, stating that any new development, any new streets would be assigned a typology via the design review process when it is proposed. Does that make sense? And to get the full picture, you have to cross-reference a whole bunch of different documents. Anyway,
could I ask so are you saying that as any new area develops as we move south, basic structure is put in place, but we have to rethink and discuss as new streets and new projects go in? Is that kind of the way this works?
Yes, and I'm talking just for the downtown core, but it is actually the same for anywhere in the city. You know, a developer or owner can't just randomly decide to put in
True,
a 2-lane or a 4-lane or whatever. I mean, yeah, there are street typologies for the entire city.
It probably will become more prevalent discussion in the next few years because of so much new development that has not occurred.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So the biggest change on this map regarding actually the biggest change on this map was regarding Bricktown. We changed it we changed Automobile Alley and Bricktown to be the same development typology, the same being special destination historic, because they both derive their character from historic brick warehouse buildings that front the street. So that's a change from last time related to that. Also, big picture changes were to show up on all the maps were a convention center site, because we didn't know that in 2015. Showing the lower park accurately, streets are not running through the lower park, and generally updating street labels. Building typology matrix, we're deleting this. It was too confusing. We're proposing to delete it. It's too confusing to interpret. We believe that compatibility between any development is made possible by the accumulation of all the design guidelines. Future development guide, we are proposing to delete that. It was too confusing to predict what might happen. It was too difficult to keep it updated. It was too difficult to interpret whether it's aspirational or whether it's saying you must do something at a certain intensity. We are proposing to delete that. Another change that affects Bricktown is we created a new map showing that streetcar and park frontage priority areas really need to follow more strict guidelines about facade transparency, no structured parking on the routes. We need to limit curb cuts, and we really need all of these areas to be as dense and as mixed use as possible, because the park and the streetcars are significant public improvements that need to be taken full advantage of in terms of development. So this map identifies where all those park frontages are and where the streetcar route is, which obviously affects Bricktown. Certain street typologies, none in Bricktown changed. Some changed over here on the hill development. Again, we updated this to show the streets that connect through from between across the railroad tracks and across the boulevard. Then, that was the update to the PowerPoint, but to briefly review concerns from last time. Okay, we talked about connectivity. Several comments last time were that committee members didn't think the DDF went far enough in showing connectivity, but there are a lot of pages in the DDF that talk about how multiple forms of mobility, where they're located, how they work together with each other, pedestrians, cycling, mass transit, automobiles. I believe it's all captured. Mostly it's like pages 25 to 30 of your handout. Sub-districts, there was concern that the DDF didn't adequately address Lower Bricktown. Lower Bricktown is not reviewed by the committee, but it is identified with a development typology, so any rezoning of it would be evaluated against the comprehensive plan and the DDF. So I do believe it is addressed. Producer's comment, again, I thought it was a big improvement to address its connectivity through to the north and to the west. Boathouse is identified with special destination development typology. The North Shore, there was discussion last time. I think people were remembering the Court of Shore renderings from 10 years ago, and all that's captured. This dark red is high intensity mixed use stuff right on the riverbank. There was a lot of discussion about how low impact development and green infrastructure could or should be integrated into this document. We can't do that at this point because the city has not adopted any guidelines for low impact development, because those guidelines and criteria will affect much more than this document. It affects public works, it affects development services when they're reviewing permits, and we haven't, as part of the code update, there will be a process to get all those stakeholders on the same page to propose what the criteria are. And once we know what the criteria are, then we can get to the guidelines, and then we have to update the code to make sure it supports it, because as you know, right now the code only does not allow pervious pavement for parking areas. You have to get a variance. So to to integrate low-impact development principles in this document, I believe, is premature because it just hasn't been a collective effort to define what that means. And as I think we agreed last time, nothing in this document does not allow it. So the planning department, we always support creativity in that area. But like I said, that should all be fleshed out during the code update process. There were also questions about the landscaping and tree species in the lower park area and, in kind of the swath of the river because of the high water table and soil conditions. There, I had forgotten last time that in the riverfront design guidelines, there is a separate list of recommended tree species. I assume they were selected for this reason. I don't know that. We did agree last time that we would study all that. It won't be immediately, but we can. But nothing in the downtown development framework addresses landscaping other than to say where streets, trees, and softscape are appropriate in the streetscape. So does that help? Does that address
I have a
concerns
question.
from last time? Yes.
There has been obviously much effort put into the plantings in the new park. I mean, there's a whole list, and the public is encouraged to use the list of species as a guideline if they're wanting to find trees that are sustainable and adaptable, very adapted to our area. So what you're saying is perhaps that list will change as we move further south, or we just don't know. I guess my concern is, I would like as much effort and thought put into that lower part as what we currently have, and is that something that has to be on a piece of paper, or how does that work?
Okay, there's a document called Trees and Plants for Oklahoma City, and it provides recommended trees, shrubs, other plantings, ground covers for the entire city limits. And for specific applications like near power lines, things that are good for street trees, all of these things. And I say all of these things, there really aren't that many species of any of these materials that will survive and do the job. So that exists. It's a reference for the whole city. We reference it when we review applications. There have been times when applicants want to propose a different species, and in the book, Trees and Plants, there's a process where it describes how people would recommend something else. That's only happened maybe once or twice. We did update it in 2016 because we were hearing from various landscape architects that things needed to change. I don't remember the full scope of those changes, but we receive feedback, hey, this isn't working, that isn't working, and we revise it. So to your point, it all needs to be somewhat formalized to show that everybody agrees, because it's not just planning, it's also Parks Department, Public Works, that everybody agrees that the branches and the roots and the maintenance of it won't be difficult. Does that answer your question? And so we're always collecting comments on all of our guidelines and to study them. I'm not a landscape architect. I haven't studied if what was codified in the riverfront, if that was intended to address, I assume they were selected specifically because of the soil and water conditions at the river, but I haven't studied it.
Okay.
But I can just not in a month's
But
time.
I think what I hear is that there will be lots of thought when time comes to
Yes, yes.
work through that.
Yeah, and thank you for asking that, because I think sometimes people assume all this stuff is a random decision by a few people, but I'm like, no, it is, it is a lot of stakeholders offering their input from their perspective, and that's how we all agree on what an appropriate solution is.
Thank you.
Do we have any more? Are you?
Yeah, I was just going to say, so we're asking the committee to make a recommendation to Planning Commission, and then we will take this to Planning Commission for its recommendation, and then council will adopt the amendment. And then we will reprint copies that will not have these call-out boxes with the changes. Those will disappear in your final corrected copy. They're just for reference during the review process.
Are there any more questions from Richard?
Just one. I'm looking at the maps that talk about street typology, and I think it said this represents the existing street pattern. I'm trying to find the page that I saw a minute ago. And then it also has another page that talks about street typologies. I'm on page 23. So if we look at Reno, as it runs through Bricktown, it says high intensity, and of course Reno is one of the biggest opportunities we have for parking. And if you go for on-street parking, if you go to the parking page, Reno is shown as an opportunity to create some parking. And now that would be on page 33. So it says primary parking, high priority to maximize the supply of on-street parking. And I guess I'm trying to ask is there an inherent conflict built in there that it, can it be both?
Well, if you look at if you look on page 26, it shows that on-street parking is appropriate.
Thank you. That is
Yeah,
the page
just because it's, quote, high intensity doesn't mean it's 4+ lanes.
Okay. That makes sense.
And then...
That's 26 was the page I was looking for.
Okay.
To tell us how to do it. All right.
Yeah, and but thank you for pointing that out, because I think we don't look at the parking priority page very much. I don't, but I hadn't until recently. But basically, it says every street you should be able to park on. End of story. So that's I think a concept we all agree with. I mean, because no street is exempt from, no street is not shown on the parking priority plan.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I've been working on a drawing of trying to figure out how many
Right.
parking places we could get in there. It's
Right.
not
There
my
you go.
highest priority right now, but I've been working on it. I'll report back soon.
Do we have any more comments from the committee related to the items Lisa addressed?
I just wanted to say thank you for researching the LID portion. It's really helpful to kind of know what the process is and that it's out there, and then we all can kind of keep track of it and
Okay.
championing that cause. So I appreciate
Great.
that.
And what is it that you are needing
A recommendation to Planning Commission
Yeah.
to,
recommend approval of the update to Planning Commission.
I'd be happy to make a recommendation. I move to recommend approval of the update.
I second that.
Fantastic. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Approval for update to Planning Commission.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, let's see there. That finishes our other business. Then we come to communications. Item A, administrative approval report. None to comment on. Comments from the planning department staff. Did Michael have anything that he needed to relay through you, Lisa?
The most important comment is Ophelia had her baby last week. I think I heard it was a girl, but
I was
I'm not
thinking,
sure.
I'm not sure.
You think?
I think that's right.
I think
50%
so.
chance.
As far as we know, she's
51
doing
maybe?
well, but she will be on maternity leave for several months, so we'll see her after January, I think. I'm not sure, as I'm talking to you, if we will have a November 13th meeting. As you can see, there's been no administrative approvals. Things have been slow in the development activity area. I'm not sure why that is.
Okay, and so then...
Sorry, and I was going to say, did everybody see the Aia Film Challenge video that's of the East Side project? If you Google AIA Film Challenge 2019, American Institute of Architects, the national organization, runs an annual film competition for it's like a 3 to 5 minute film that explores how architects are helping communities, and the grand prize winner was the East Side project on Northeast 23rd, which Jonathan and Sandino were heavily involved in and prominently figure in the film. So, yeah, it's a huge honor, I think, for Oklahoma City.
That's great. Thank you, Lisa. So there are any comments from the committee members? We're just trying to get out of here? No. I will say I am ecstatic that the park is open, and I will give a shout out to Brent for the fantastic job he did in the tour involvement for the park. And as Mayor Holt said, we now no longer, we're past history where we have our grand park, and I'm just so excited to have it and thrilled to go visit it and take our son there and enjoy everything that it brings our city. So super happy about that and the progress we're just making. So that's all I got. Anything else? All right, so we don't know if we have a meeting in November, so let's adjourn today at 9:28. Thanks, everybody.